Good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Saturday, July 8th public hearing of the Independent District Commission. The purpose of today's hearing is for community members to provide testimony on the Independent District Commission's draft plan for geographic districts in Portland. My name is Jamie and I will be moderating the session today. And before I provide more details about what you can expect today, I want to make sure that everyone has the ability to participate. Can you still hear me? Okay. So first, this meeting is being recorded, and recording will be posted online. So if you missed anything while we were talking, or if you want to tell your friends about it, you'll be able to find it on our website at portlandoregon.gov/transition/district commission. We have American Sign Language and Spanish interpretation available today. So if you would like to access these interpretation services, please see the folks at the sign-in table and they will help you connect. Also, if you came here to give testimony and you haven't done so already, please go to that same sign-in table and we will put you in the queue to give testimony today. If time allows, after everyone who wants to has testified, the commission may open the hearing to answering questions that you may have. So we'll see how that goes. But if you do not want to testify in person today, there are many other ways to provide input. So I'm going to go over a few of those just so you can follow up if you'd like to. So you can submit public comment by emailing districtcommission@portlandoregon.gov. You can call 311 and give verbal testimony over the phone, and I believe they can also take testimony in multiple different languages. You can fill out a public comment card, and you can find them in the back table over there if you'd like to provide written testimony today. And you can fill out the online survey at portland.gov/transition/district commission/draft plan. That's a lot, but if you go to portland.gov transition, you'll be able to find your way there. Or finally, you can mail your written comments to the Office of Management and Finance, care of the IDC, or Independent District Commission, at 1120 Southwest 5th Avenue, room 901, Portland 97204. And the public comment period is open until Saturday, July 22nd. Okay. So I'm going to wrap up this intro by quickly going over the agenda before handing it over to the commissioners. For our time together today, the Independent District Commission co-chairs will start with an educational presentation to give you an overview of the commission's proposals, and then we will open up to public testimony for community members to testify. Then we will conclude our afternoon with some closing remarks before adjourning the session and enjoying the rest of our Saturday. So now I will pass it over to our Independent District Commissioners co-chairs, Commissioners Saxena and Lorente, for the educational presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Awesome. So welcome to the Independent District Commission public hearing on the draft district plan. And I want to emphasize that these are drafts, so we are here because we very much want to hear from you. My name is Nisha Saxena. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm serving as a commissioner along with my fellow commissioner, Commissioner Lorente. Also, Commissioner Judd is here, and he is one of the current co-chairs with Commissioner Lorente. So on behalf of the Independent District Commission, we want to take a moment to thank you for taking time out of your day to be here with us. Before we hear from you, we're going to present a short presentation about our work to date. So let's see, next slide, please. Is there? I'm trying to think, is there a slide deck? I can go ahead. So currently, all of Portland's elected officials can live anywhere in the city, and they're elected by voters across the entire city. Under the new system approved by voters in the November 2022 election, 4 geographic districts will be created with 3 city councilors in each of those districts. And those city councilors will reside in their district and be elected to represent each of those 4 districts. So now there will be 12 district-based city councilors rather than the current 5 at-large councilors. So right now, all 5 city council members are elected by the entire city. So the Independent District Commission was created by voter-approved amendments to the city charter. It's tasked with preparing and adopting the district plan for city council elections, starting with the election of November 2024. So starting next November, this new structure will go into place. This primarily involves working with the community and professional experts to design the district maps that will be in place until the next redistricting cycle in 2030, after the census. The Independent District Commission consists of 13 voting members as well as alternate and reserve alternate members. All of us were selected through an open community-wide application process. We were all appointed by the mayor, and then we were confirmed by the city council in January of 2023. And as the name suggests, the Independent District Commission is a fully independent community body authorized to create the district plan for the city of Portland. The District Commission has a unique authority, so if 9 out of the 13 voting commissioners, if 9 of us approve the plan, it's adopted and final. However, if after 2 attempted votes, the District Commission can't reach the 9-vote supermajority, then the most recent version of the plan is referred to the City Council for its consideration and adoption. As the District Commission prepares the district plan, we are guided by the voter-approved charter amendments and state and federal districting laws. We must use the voter-approved district criteria and any additional criteria we set forth. And we're required to hold 9 public hearings. 1 public hearing was held early in the process before we developed the district plan to seek public comment on whether any additional plan criteria should be considered. And we voted not to add any new criteria to those specified in the adopted charter measure. And this month, 8 public hearings must be held, 2 in each of the proposed districts before we vote to adopt the district plan. So the draft district plan, so the 3 maps that you see that are around the room today, were made available to the community 1 month before the first of the 8 public hearings. 1 month before the first of those 8 public hearings that took place on July 5th. And we can't vote on the plan until 1 month after our last public hearing, which takes place on July 16th. So we're actually holding 9 public hearings. So 8 of them are this month, in the month of July. So we're actually holding 9 public hearings because two Zoom hearings were added to provide more opportunities for the widespread community input beyond what we elicit at the in-person hearings across the city. So the commission, so all of us, need to adopt the district plan no later than September 1 of 2023. And we've received questions from community members about whether we can take more time, but the timeline was established in the voter-approved measure. So I'm going to turn it over to Josh at this point, I think. Or do I have more?
You have
No,
more.
I've got more. Okay. Sorry. This is my first hearing. Apologies. Okay. So let's see. I think that is the slide. Okay. The next few slides are going to be somewhat technical. And we're sharing this so that you've got a broad understanding of the state and federal law that guide our work. So creating initial districts and redistricting once a decade, our process is controlled by 2 federal laws, the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution and the Voting Rights Act. Under the Equal Protection Clause, the creation of initial districts and the periodic updating of the districts must be substantially equal in population. This requirement is known as one person, one vote. I think most of you are probably familiar with that. The primary tool used in the redistricting process is the U.S. Census, the federal census. The U.S. Constitution mandates a census every 10 years to count every resident in the United States. The census includes basic demographic data, including total population by age, race, housing, and housing occupancy. Because district populations shift over time, district boundaries must be redrawn after the census is administered every 10 years to ensure that each person's vote remains equally weighted. We've received questions from community members asking us to consider how population in the city might shift in the future, but we must work with data from the 2020 census and leave that to the next redistricting in 2030. The Voting Rights Act of 1965, which is one of the Civil Rights Acts, requires districts that do not discriminate on the basis of race, color, or membership in a protected class or a language minority group. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act prohibits districting plans that are intended to be racially discriminatory or that are shown to have a racially discriminatory result. So let's see, next slide, please. Awesome. Okay. The commission is required to create the district plan using the voter-approved district criteria. As shared earlier, the commission decided not to add criteria to those already approved. The voter-approved district criteria requires that the district commission ensure that each district, as nearly as practicable, is one, contiguous and compact, and that means that each district is one geographically connected piece without any unconnected elements. The smallest element that we're working with to design these maps are census blocks that are defined by the U.S. Census. 2, that each district utilizes existing geographic or political boundaries. And so that means that natural or man-made boundaries such as highways, mountains, rivers, which already often divide communities and make innate borders, or political boundaries like legislative districts, county districts, school districts. And the third criteria is that we do not divide communities of common interest. And so communities of common interest are recognized by academics and jurisdictions throughout the country as groups that share a common policy concern and would benefit from being districted together. Dividing a community of common interest often leads to a decreased ability to advocate for their community's needs or priorities. There's also criteria around being connected by transportation links, and that means highways, roads, streets, public transportation. And also, all the districts have to be of substantially equal population, meaning that each district has the same number of people. The commission is working to create a district plan with less than 5% deviation in population between districts. So the district commission also must ensure that no district be drawn for the purpose of, 1, favoring any political party, incumbent elected official, or any other person, and 2, diluting the voting strength of any language or ethnic minority group. The criteria prescribed in the charter are similar to what has been upheld in federal courts regarding the formation of political districts across the country. So those are the criteria required by federal law that's used across the country. Okay. So next slide. In creating each district, data is used to define the criteria. On the screen, you can see examples of some data sets that can help define district criteria. Some criteria require using specific data sets. For example, population and any Voting Rights Act related issues must use the data released in the 2020 decennial census and most recent American Community Survey, which is also data that comes out from the Census Bureau. The American Community Survey is an annual survey at a smaller scale than the census that compiles additional geographic and socioeconomic community data. Some data sets can be used to help define multiple criteria. For example, school district boundaries, high school enrollment areas could be considered any existing political boundaries or a community of common interest because its quality and effectiveness is a shared concern. The criteria regarding communities of common interest is where we most want community input from all of you to help us define those communities. You know how you define your community by your shared experiences and concerns, and we want to hear from you about those. The District Commission has been working with the technical districting consultants to gather different data sets to help inform the district criteria. The data sets you can see on the screen are not representative of all the data the Commission has been using. Other data sets that we've been looking at have been socioeconomic status, like household income and other indicators, voter precincts, public transportation routes, home ownership versus renters, access to public goods and services, and a whole bunch more data sets similar to that. Okay, so next slide. The District Commission is committed to ensuring the districting process is transparent and community-driven. Portlanders have engaged in a variety of ways to inform the creation of the draft maps. And we've already received over 3.5 hours of public testimony, hundreds of public comments, and almost 200 draft map options submitted by members of the public through our online mapping tool. Commissioners have also attended community-led districting events, held individual meetings with community leaders, and spent hours reflecting on what we've heard. The Commission has made a deliberate effort to center the voices of those who have not been historically a part of city design making. So with that background about the District Commission's work process and a little detail about districting, I'm going to turn things over to Commissioner Lorente to talk about our draft maps.
Awesome.
So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Commissioner Saxena, for grounding us in that very informative recap. My name is Josh Laurenti, he, him. I have the privilege of serving as co-chair for this last phase of the Commission's work, and I want to thank you all for taking time out of your weekend to be here today. So now I would like to pivot to a discussion of the draft district plan and a discussion of the draft maps themselves. So on June 1st, the District Commission released 3 maps for your consideration, outlining possible boundaries for the new districts. Each of these 3 maps, named Alder, Cedar, and Maple, adhere to the district criteria that voters approved last November and are directly informed by the community input that we've received to date. So I'm going to begin by describing the key themes and characteristics that all of these maps share in common. And then I'll identify and talk about the 2 key areas of difference that you'll see across all 3 of these maps, and then we'll look at each of these maps individually to discuss the underlying rationale behind these different trade-offs and considerations. So to begin with what these maps share in common, first, all 3 of these maps uplift representation in East Portland by connecting communities east of I-205 in a single district. And in drawing this East Portland district in this way, the Commission was also able to connect the 4 non-Portland public school districts within that same district. So that would be Park Rose, David Douglas, Reynolds, and Centennial. All 3 maps use the same combination of I-205 and 82nd Avenue to draw that westernmost border of that East Portland district, and that was to preserve the J District interests as well as the Lentz neighborhood. Shifting attention now to the North Portland district, shown in yellow. So the North Portland district, all the neighborhoods of North Portland are included in a single district, with the exception of those included in the Park Rose School District. And if you look at the area around the Portland Airport, we drew that border in order to make sure that the homes and businesses and organizations on the north and south sides of Columbia Boulevard are also connected in that North Portland district. Another common theme of this North Portland district is that historic Albina is preserved within this yellow district. And that was out of consideration for the history of harm and displacement to our communities in that part of the city, as well as in recognition of the work being done by community leaders to restore that area. The last common theme that I'll touch on is that all communities on the west side of the Willamette River are connected in a single district. So Commissioner Saxena noted earlier that one of our criteria to follow was to follow existing natural geographic boundaries, and the Willamette River is perhaps the most defining boundary, literally in the middle of the city. So with those common themes, I now want to identify the 2 key areas that you'll notice where these maps are different. The first is that the first difference answers the question, what communities on the east side of the river best connect to a west side district? And that is because the population on the west side of the river is not sufficient to meet that equal population criteria that we discussed earlier. So each of these maps, guided by different rationales, offer different trade-offs and considerations for what communities best connect to a west side district. And we'll get into that as we look at the maps individually. The second key difference you'll see is how to define the border, that sort of southern border of the North Portland district. So if you look at where the yellow district meets the teal district, that is the other area of difference. And again, each of these maps offers a different rationale for how we define that boundary. So now, looking at each of these maps individually, we'll start with the Alder map. The Alder map is built around preserving established neighborhood boundaries. On the Alder map, the West Side District includes the neighborhoods of Selwood, Eastmoreland, Westmoreland, and Reed, because these are the neighborhoods that share distinct demographic and socioeconomic similarities to communities on the west side of the river, and they are also connected by the Selwood and Ross Island bridges. On the Alder map, the southern border of that North Portland district is defined using neighborhood association boundaries that straddle Sandy Boulevard. I'll also point out that the Alder map divides the central city among 3 districts, using the Willamette River and I-84 as boundaries in order to promote engagement across districts with central city issues, as well as economic opportunities. And this also distributes significant assets and institutions among multiple districts. Looking now at the Cedar map is built around prioritizing transit corridors that bring communities together. So on the Cedar map, the West Side District includes the Central East Side Industrial Council District, as well as the Brooklyn and Selwood neighborhoods, because these are the areas on the east side of the river that share 8 bridge connections across the Willamette and have bus and Max Line connections that connect it to the Teal District you see there. And on the Cedar map, the southern border of that North Portland district is defined using Sandy Boulevard from about 37th to 82nd. Looking now to the Maple map is built around keeping much of the central city together. And this is guided by the City of Portland's 2035 Comprehensive Plan. On the Maple map, the West Side District includes the neighborhoods of Buckman, Kearns, as well as part of the Hosford-Abernathy neighborhood. And this is, again, one, to keep the central city together, but also to connect the high percentage of renters in these neighborhoods of Buckman, Kearns, and Hosford, and connecting them into a West Side District with other renter-heavy neighborhoods such as Goose Hollow, Old Town, University, and South Waterfront. On the Maple map, the border between the North Portland District and the Southeast Central District in Teal is defined using a combination of neighborhood association boundaries as well as Sandy Boulevard. So now questions for community. In showing these maps and asking for your feedback, we're really hoping to hear how you want to be represented, how you want your communities represented, how well you think these common themes reflect important priorities for the city, and to get your sense as to what's missing and what else we should be considering. The Independent District Commission has been committed to ensuring that the final district plan is reflective of the priorities of Portlanders from all backgrounds, with a focus on creating an equitable and inclusive process. Now that the 3 maps have been released for public input, the Commission is committed to engaging with even more Portlanders to hear additional feedback, opinions, questions, concerns, and ideas. The community feedback we receive will be integral to informing the final district plan in August. This is a collective opportunity for all of us to fundamentally reshape our city government for the better, and the gravity of this task cannot be overstated. Not only will these districts make up the City Council for the November 2024 elections, the final map will be in place until after the 2030 census. It is our hope that these 3 maps will prompt reactions and reflections about how Portlanders want to be represented in City Hall going forward. We understand that some of what has been presented today might be unfamiliar, it might be technical, and we hope that this presentation gave you a better understanding of our work. So before we begin public testimony, I want to share some of the other ways that the community can engage and provide us with feedback or have your questions answered. We are accepting public comment through Saturday, July 22nd, and there are many ways for folks in the community to share their feedback. We have an online public comment form. You can email us at districtcommission@portlandoregon.gov. You can also call 311 to give comment verbally, and you can also write to us to the address shown on the screen here. And with that, this concludes our presentation, and I will pass it back to our moderator to get us started with public testimony.
Great. Thank you, commissioners. So now's the time. We will begin our public testimony, but before we start, I have a few things to go over with you. First, if you have not signed up yet, it is not too late. Again, you can sign up at the table to give public testimony. I see Zach waving his hands if you'd like to. If you are giving testimony, here's what you need to know. You will have 3 minutes to share your thoughts. I will be keeping track of time on my phone. You will hear a very pleasant chiming. I promise it won't be annoying. When giving testimony, we ask that you please state your name, your zip code or neighborhood if you prefer. If you are testifying on behalf of an organization, we'd like to know that. And please identify which map you are testifying about. And lastly, we ask that you please remember to go slowly if possible for our interpreters. There are also some rules that you should know. So to ensure this is a welcoming space, we want to make sure that everyone here today follows some rules of conduct. Disruptive conduct, such as interrupting someone or not concluding your testimony during the allocated time or the pleasant chiming, yelling or using foul language will not be allowed. If there are any disruptions, a warning will be given, and a further warning may result in you being removed for the remainder of the meeting, and we really don't want that. So thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome and making sure everyone has the opportunity to be heard. All right, enough of me talking. I'm going to see who has signed up. It looks like we have 6 people signed up to testify today. I'm going to call your name in blocks of 2, so the first person can come up and the next person can be prepared. So the first 2 testifiers today is Steve Hartwell and Chris Beck. Steve, are you here?
I'm here.
Great.
Good afternoon. My name's Steve Hartwell. I live in the Jade District, and I'm here for myself. My issue is with the name Maple. I mean, seriously. You know, what's in a name? Well, names can be used to identify people, places, and things, and they create an image. The proposed name Maple just doesn't fit. It doesn't fit anywhere in Portland. If you look at the 2016 Portland Plant Guide, maples are an invasive species. So let's be clear what that means. And I'm going to quote, it says that the plants on the nuisance plant list are invasive. They threaten the health and vitality of native habitat, humans, and cause economic harm to public and private landowners. Planting of these plants should be avoided and removed. So I'm going to repeat that. Encourage removal. So I don't want my district, if it happens to be Maple, to be seen by the city of Portland as nuisance. And believe me, maples are well hated by Portland. And that's a strong word because you note, I have it right here. It's on the dirty 30 list of invasive trees in Forest Park. So maple, guys, I don't know what you were thinking. Seriously, this is common knowledge. If you just Google it, you'll see maples are not welcome in Portland. So if you name us Maple, you're saying we're not welcome in Portland. And also, using transportation links, keep in mind, those can be changed. They can be changed instantly. So let's say TriMet decides we want to concentrate on a different route. How easy it for them. Also the name, when we get a final name, why don't you ask, well, take a tip from TriMet. They got a really successful name in Max, right? So consider Maple. Guys, it shouldn't have been on there. It was a slam to our neighborhood. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Steve. The next testifier is Chris Beck, followed by Brian Jensrold.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Beck. Let's see, Arnold Creek neighborhood area representing myself, and I'm commenting on all the plans. I think none of them are right. I want you to go back to the drawing board a bit. Thanks for doing this, for serving. It's hard work, and I think you've got more work to do. I served in the Oregon legislature 25 years ago, was involved with the redistricting process then. I follow federal redistricting processes as a hobby, kind of obsessively. So I think hard about what you're doing. The plans, to me, strike me as just too similar. They're not different enough for the community to really digest and offer a range of alternatives. And I think I would encourage you to try to add some alternatives that are offer different perspective. To me, these plans create more divisiveness in the city. I grew up in outer Southwest. My mother had grown up in the 1920s and 30s in Hollywood, so I was always comfortable with going back and forth across the river, seeing my grandmother. The East Side was never an alien place to me as a West Side person, but most of the people I knew on the West Side never crossed the bridge. That was Portland of that time, and I think all these plans, unfortunately, perpetuate that historical problem in our city. When the Central City Plan was crafted in the 1990s, it was intentionally made to use the river to link us, east and west. And that was a good plan, just for downtown, of course, but it had that objective of trying to end this divisiveness along the river. I think your plans all, again, perpetuate some of the divisiveness which has plagued the city. And I think I would encourage you to think hard about some other approaches that would bridge the river and the districts. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. I have ideas of different approaches. I think there ought to be a bridge plan, or 3 bridge plans, that you could meet a lot of your common objectives, community objectives, by, let's say, Selwood Bridge and Ross Island Bridge being one lateral district, the Hawthorne, Morrison, and Burnside being another, the Burnside and Broadway and St. John's Bridge being another, and then maybe preserving a strongly Outer East Side district in the course of doing all that. That would be the sort of plan. I hope you will consider devising, 1 or 2 extra versions of, say, these bridge plans which link both sides of the river and the communities. I think it'd be great if West Side people were thinking about more aspects on the East Side all the time, instead of just West Side people thinking only about West Side. Under my ideas, it's not clear to me any West Side people would ever get elected. That's okay. But if they did, they would be thinking about the downtown on the West Side, as would East Side people always also be thinking about downtown on the East Side. We need more inclusive approach in these plans. I don't think any of them really accomplish it in a way that I think should be
Thank you,
presented
Chris.
to the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next testifier is Brian Jensrold, followed by Kenya Juarez. Just as a reminder, when you share your name, please also share your zip code or your neighborhood and what map you're testifying about. Go ahead, Brian.
All right. My name is Brian Jensvold. I live in the Lentz neighborhood right off of 82nd. I'm a new home buyer. I bought right before the pandemic, where before that, I believe I lived in the Elliott neighborhood, if that's like MLK and Fremont, so up there. Didn't really know the neighborhood name or anything like that, but so I've experienced both. Looking at the map, I actually agree with what the last speaker just said, that the first time I was exposed to these 3 maps in the Oregonian, they were about this big, and I was like, they just drew the same map 3 times, given the option between vanilla bean, French vanilla, and regular vanilla ice cream sort of deal. I know certain people probably see a significant difference in that, and people who are more familiar with school neighborhoods or whatnot probably see the value in that. I don't have kids. I grew up in Beaverton, so I can't quite speak to that, but there are a couple things that I notice. So I am actually the assistant, almost sort of the district leader for HD 46 of the Multnomah Democrats. I also lead the study group for election integrity, and now that the session is over, this is our next big concern, is what you guys wind up doing. So anyway, concerning the maps, I agree. One thing specifically about the East Side district that would actually fall on me, I think including the airport is, I actually attempted to draw my own maps using a website, probably similar to yours, and I ran into the same situation.
1 minute.
Okay. Living in Lentz, if I want to go to the airport, I take the green line and then I have to switch to the red line. So how am I as connected to the airport as people in the northern section? When I was looking at a house, north of Lombard. I think people in Lombard would probably be more concerned about the airport than me on the borderline of Clackamas, because houses there have to factor in the noise pollution that comes into living around the airport. It actually impacts their home prices. When I did attempt my own maps, I actually did do a map that just had 4 bars going horizontally, and I managed, without subdividing precincts, was the population difference was within a couple hundred. These maps, they are off by the ideal by over 1,000 and sometimes 2,000 people, which is 1% or whatnot. But there could be improvements. And then I also noticed you were dividing precinct. When I was attempting to mimic your maps, I think it required you guys to subdivide precincts. I don't know if precincts are all-inclusive when it comes to school regions, but
Thank you, Brian.
it's me.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Now Kenya Juarez, followed by Elsie Hansen.
My name is Kenya Juarez. I'm a digital manager at a national nonprofit and a board member of Next Up Action Fund. But today, I'm here to speak on behalf of myself as an under 30 renter living in the Buckman neighborhood in support of the Alder map. I love my neighborhood. I live in Buckman on Southeast 11th Avenue. As a person of color in Portland, I enjoy the welcoming and safe pockets of diversity in my neighborhood, supporting small businesses, and being within walking distance of other neighborhoods I spend probably too much time in, like Hawthorne, Division, and Belmont. The neighborhood I love, and will actually soon re-sign a lease in, is now threatened by both the Maple and Cedar maps. There are a few reasons as to why this concerns me. First, pairing inner and central east side with the west side overall will lessen the voice of the people who live in the east side neighborhoods. So for example, I do not believe, but I'm hopeful, potentially, that someone like me or who would feel representative to me or other inner east siders could run for office and win if we had to campaign the west side with so much differences. There's also an income gap across the east and west side that can't be ignored. The youth census blocks with a significant percentage of young Portlanders ages 18 to 34 in Buckman and Kearns, which I fall under, are also renter census blocks, also a renter. These same census blocks also have lower income than the west side, with the income gap being anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000. Lastly, creating districts with the notion of one area being a renter district or a person of color district is deeply problematic. There are renters and people of color all over the city, and we should be elected and electable in every district. And on the most personal level, every neighborhood has its charm and quirks. But who I am, what I value, and where I can show up authentically does not feel represented on the west side. It pains me to think about the inner east side being further gentrified or having elected officials represent me who don't live in the neighborhood. I support the Alder map or something similar, which groups areas of similar income from the east and west side. Our only chance for true representation is to continue being paired with the east side and the neighborhoods I love. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kenya. Elsie Hansen, followed by James Paulson.
Hi, I'm L.C. Hansen, she, her. I live in Brooklyn, 97202. I'm a member of the neighborhood group there, and we talked these maps over at our climate challenge committee and at our neighborhood, but we didn't have time to do a vote. So I'm here to send along the best ideas from that I can represent honestly. First, Brooklyn is a very small neighborhood, as you know. It's rapidly gentrifying from having been a working class, relatively poor inner city neighborhood. There's a ton of fancy condos going up, and we're being changed rapidly. We have environmental alliances with Sellwood and Eastmoreland over the issue of the railroads. The Brooklyn rail yards divide our neighborhoods and provide a lot of diesel fuel and stuff. So the maps that we thus far favor are in this order. We prefer Maple, Alder's okay, Cedar's awful. I want to tell you why Cedar is awful first up and work my way towards the positive. Cedar would divide our Brooklyn community right down the middle, completely eliminating our community as a political force, just divide our neighborhood right down the middle. Also, the transportation rationale for Cedar includes political structures that are not City of Portland political structures. For example, TriMet, that's not city. Railroads, that's not city. ODOT, that's not city. And we're affected by all of them in Brooklyn. Alder, moving my way up positively, Alder's okay, but could you take a look at the southern border of Alder? It actually, Holgate is not the break between Sellwood and Brooklyn. We go a little further south and it's all industrial related to, just take a look at that map, you'll see. Maple is best for us because the political considerations, the construction that was done on the 2035 plan, focus on the idea of a central city with hubs that go out. Yes, for Brooklyn, it would maintain our integrity as a neighborhood. It is the only map that would. None of the other two do. But a lot of granular work on zoning went into that 2035 plan, and I would hate to see that be tossed out through this political process, which is valuable. And so, to ask you to preserve Brooklyn's community, thank you. I'd also like to emote on a personal level as I close, thanking you, because I love, and so does Brooklyn, that 82nd out, that 205 becomes a neighborhood and North becomes a neighborhood. They absolutely should have political power. We support that in Brooklyn. We're for it, and thank you for your work.
Thank you, Elsie. James Paulson, followed by Betsy Toll.
Good afternoon. My name is James Paulson, and I live in the Kearns neighborhood. And I would like to thank all of you for your hard work in putting this together. I know it's not easy. What I would like to do is, first off, say that I've actually changed what I was going to support, thanks to some of the comments that I heard from other folks. As a native Portlander who's born and raised here in Portland, really trying to preserve some of the historic differences in Portland, and one of those biggest is the east side and west side. And so I'd like to put support behind the Alder plan, because I think that it does support that east side, west side, because when you look at the inner east side being part of the east side and part of the opportunity of new growth of the east side and the economic dynamicness that can follow that, I think that that should be considered with the east side rather than being pulled over into the west side and the challenges that downtown is faced with. I think that those challenges are considerably different. I also think that the Alder plan works better in keeping neighborhoods together. When you look at these neighborhoods, I know that you guys looked at population, but it would be better if you took a deeper step and you looked at families and you looked at the congregation of families. On the west side, my hypothesis would be you would see less family units, where on the east side you would see more family units. A lot of that has to do with the price of living in those different areas. And areas that have higher density of family units are going to have different concerns than areas where it is renters that don't have families as much in their needs and so forth. One of the challenges that I have with the Alder district is where I live now. I am in the neighborhood of the high school I went to, which was Grant High School. With this, I would live in a different geographic split out than the high school, which I still live in the neighborhood of. And so when you look at some of those splits, you're going to have people who are living in one district and their kids could go to school in another one of the districts. So that's one of the reasons why I think that it's important that you look at families and how people move. The one last piece I want to make is in these maps, a lot of them were using the river as a divider. We need to look to see who has responsibility for that river, because we're having a lot of challenges along the river, whether it's boats that are left on the river, people living along the river. We need to be able to manage that waterway much more successfully. Thank you for your time.
Perfect timing. Thank you, James. Betsy Toll, followed by Nadine Rosen.
Hi, my name is Betsy Toll. I live in Creston Kenilworth neighborhood and also lived for 12 years in Sabin. I've been in Portland 35 years. And thank you to all of you. You have a thankless task. And thank you to everyone who has commented. The comments have been very thoughtful. And I wish we had a longer timeline. I personally thought that 4 districts was a ridiculous idea. I thought we should have 8 or even 12 districts, so that with 1 elected rep each, so that that elected rep was really centered in the district and responsible and responsive to the people in their district. And instead, we're setting up a very different system that I have serious concerns about. I happen, in the time that I've lived here, which is quite a while, a couple of my younger neighbors have said, why are they ignoring that the river does divide Portland? And I've heard that from a couple of people. The river historically has, geographically has, and economically does. And I feel like by pulling some of the inner, if you will, east side neighborhoods into the west side, you're actually detracting from the strength of the east side. You're taking those voices away. And I think that that's counterproductive to a sense of unity and a sense of, I guess, identification with where you are, and that there are differences in the neighborhoods, and that's been mentioned by a number of people. And those differences are valuable. I moved out of Sabin neighborhood. I loved Sabin neighborhood. My kids went to Sabin school, and I was gentrified out of the neighborhood economically, so we ended up out in Southeast. And now Southeast is also, there is the threat of gentrification everywhere, and that's another concern as housing becomes denser and so on and so forth. Anyway, I just think none of these maps are maps that I would really feel comfortable voting for. But I do honor and respect the work that you have and the challenge you're facing. But I hope there's some way that this process can be extended or revisited so that these are not set in stone, because I think they're going to be very inadequate to the solidarity of our whole city. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Our last 2 testifiers who have signed up anyway are Nadine Rosen, followed by Tom Rooks.
Nadine Rosen, Reed Neighborhood, 97202. I'm not here speaking for the Reed Board because we also couldn't make up our mind which map to support. I looked at the maps after our discussion at the board meeting, and I realized that for me, the Alder map is the past. And the Cedar map is what we have right now, which is because everybody bought cars during the pandemic. And the Maple map is the future because it's taking into account the design plan for the central city. And everybody keeps talking about assets for each of the sections. Assets are only assets if you have money in the budget to take care of them, because assets cost a lot of money to maintain. If you have a center city, you have everybody having to decide how OMSI is going to be upgraded, how the convention center is going to maintain any tourism to actually bring money into the city. And this is one of the concerns for me, is how do we make Portland pay for itself? I know everybody's been talking about gentrification, but the real need of a neighborhood is the compatibility granted. But all the neighbors don't want to pay higher taxes. So you have to have a budget that maintains the assets and at the same time encourages tourism, encourages businesses to come downtown, to come to the areas that are considered assets. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nadine. Do we have someone who can? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Tom Rux. We live in the Sumner neighborhood, northeast, near Park Rose. Zip code is 97220. And I just want to say as well, thank you all. I believe that adopting any of these maps would be an improvement. Our first preference would be for the Maple map for our community. We believe that it keeps its integrity. I also appreciate hearing from some of the residents of other neighborhoods that may prefer the Alder map. And I believe that if you do not adopt one of these maps, we may be not moving things forward. So again, I just wanted to thank you. The one other comment that I wanted to note was, I don't know if there was any mention of protection of parks and green spaces, but that would be one thing that I would encourage you to consider. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Commissioners, that concludes people who have signed up. So I want to open it up for anyone who may have not signed up but changed their mind and would like to testify anyway. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to testify that did not sign up? Great. Can we start with you? I see your hand back there. You can go next.
I have more of a question. My name is Mary Beth Young, and I am in the Woodstock area, 97206. I was really interested in this lateral or horizontal map, and I wonder if you could comment on whether you considered it, why you ruled it out, if this is a new idea to you. That would be an interesting discussion, because I think, especially up in the West Hills and then North Portland, they could really benefit from help.
Is there a commissioner that would like to answer that? We also have tracked a couple other questions, so we'll be able to answer some of the previous testifiers' questions.
So,
Commissioner Judd?
Yeah, so if you pull up
Use
any
the
one of the
microphone.
maps. Sorry. Yep, hold on. If you can pull up any one of the maps real quick. First of all, again, thank you all for your engagement and your time this afternoon. We really do appreciate it. And before I answer the question, I want to, I think all the commissioners would agree that these are not our maps. These are your maps. These are maps that we are putting together based upon feedback that you're providing us and the requirements that voters have defined in their vote in last year. And so our best efforts are really to draw these districts based upon that collective feedback that we're getting, right? And so, just to go back to that question, if you can pull up a specific map, just that'd be good. Any one of the specific maps, specific maps. Right. Cool. And so, try to not imagine the colorizations of the proposed districts for right now, right? Let's just think about the city of Portland. And if you were to draw a horizontal line across the northern quarter of Portland, let's think about that for a second. So along the Columbia River, extending from the east to the west, how populous do you think that area actually is? It's not very populous, right? Because what's up there is some industrial areas on the east, and then you have, in the central part, the airport, which is not populous at all. And then if you go further west, you're going to run into some runoffs there, sloughs. And then you get to the far east, across the river, and you're going to get to Forest Park, right? So if you were to draw a just to play that out for a second, if you were to draw horizontal lines across the city of Portland, that northern part is not going to fit the Fourth Amendment requirement of one vote, one citizen, right? Because you're going to have a situation where it's just not, you're not going to get equal populations, right? So that's ultimately the challenge that we're confronted with, is that there are certain, to the Commissioner Saxena's definition of what the requirements are, contiguousness as well as compactness are some of the things that we're confronted with, as well as equal population across the districts. We would just not be able to fulfill those requirements with the horizontal mapping. Now, let's go to the south. If you were to draw a line across the lower portion of Portland, that's actually going to be the most populous, right? You're going to have a large skew of folks living there, because let's reimagine now the colorization. If you think about that lower half, in that teal area, it is the most densely populated area, which is why it shows up as the smallest on most maps, because it's so densely populated. The reason why it's densely populated is not because the lines are drawn the shape is smaller. It's actually because there is lower public land use in that area. So you don't have a lot of industrialization in those areas, industrial use in that area. What you have is a high density of home ownership, apartment complexes, and so forth, right? And so because of that, that area is extremely densely populated. So if you're cutting that lower quarter of Portland, you're going to have the almost, I think it's closer to it's greater than 25% of your population located in that, which will skew the rest of the votes. So does that help answer that question? And so just in general, sorry. Oh, I'll bet you dollars of donuts that it does. You want? Yeah, absolutely. I got you.
Please don't. There's somebody who's waiting to testify. Can you please let Commissioner finish? Sir.
Sure, absolutely.
I think, first of all, I also wanted to appreciate, yeah, the mic is on. I wanted to appreciate all the comments, and particularly the thoughtfulness you gave, not only to kind of talking about your own personal circumstance, but thinking about the city as a whole and as a political community as a whole. I really like that theme that came out, so that's great. What I wanted to add regarding kind of the question, did you consider alternative designs, is that we have been considering alternative designs. As Commissioner Judd and others have said, these are designs that we're presenting to prompt conversation and feedback, but also have our maps that we've sifted through a lot. We've sifted through maps that fell into general themes. One of them was kind of a bandit theme. Another one was a pinwheel. So you can imagine all of the districts touched at one point and kind of radiated out. We looked at those. We tried to create a kind of a central district also. And then we had a robust conversation and feedback along the way, because this is not the first set of maps that people have provided comment on. We've been looking at maps for a while. So we have looked at a lot of them, and time doesn't permit to say why we honed in on these 3 designs, and well, we can say that, but not why we eventually didn't take up other designs. In part, it was the issue of population. In part, it was a consideration of communities of interest and what our understanding was about the different communities of interest that would be represented in the different districts or be denied the opportunity for representation because we drew the map a certain way. So these are based on the criteria voters decided on, and based on kind of the realities of designing and drawing up maps, the ones that right now, subject to all of the feedback and conversations we're going to have, the ones that seem to represent different approaches. And that one of the folks who offered testimony said, and I'll close with this, that if you look at them at a small enough scale, they all look the same. But when you start to blow them up, or if you live in the Brooklyn neighborhood, they start to look different, right? And that's why we love being able to hear from folks that come from different neighborhoods, so we get that input and hear from different communities of interest as we have today.
Thank you, commissioners. Of course.
Hi, all. I'm Commissioner Hanson, and just adding something on to what my fellow commissioners have said in terms of this question around having East Side as one and then the kind of 3 bands going out. I wanted to just underscore what Commissioner Fleischman said about the priority of preserving communities of common interest. And if you plug for our website and the Districtor tool, where you can actually see the couple hundred sample maps that have been submitted, and I actually just pulled up one that is to that question of the East District and kind of 3 bands where the lines are in a place where they are equal enough populations. And one of the things that has to happen is that middle band, for example, you've got Montevilla and the West Hills in the same neighborhood, right? Or you've got Multnomah Village and Mount Scott in the same neighborhood, right? Like that's what would have to happen with those bands. And as a commission, I'm seeing a lot of nods even as I say that around the room. And so as we start to think of communities of common interest, first of all, we're all Portlanders, right? And we all arguably have more in common than we don't. And at the same time, that for me at least, was one of the reasons why shifting away from those east-west bands seemed like it would do the best to preserve commonalities.
Thank you. I'm going to invite, ma'am, if you want to come up. Thanks for your patience. Would you state your name and
good discussion. Marcia Schneider. I live in actually even more south and east than Lentz, in the Pleasant Valley neighborhood. So I can see Clackamas from my backyard. Okay. So I want, first of all, thank you. Second of all, thank you for the East Side District, which is going to allow us on the East Side who have been receiving a lot of lip service for a long time to actually have 3 city councilors that may be neighborhoods or that may be communities of interest, but that we have voices, real voices, in the city council. I can't tell you how happy that makes me. Yay. I also have a lot of friends and colleagues that are in the inner East Side and in the West. Most of my friends from the West rarely venture. My experience is that I would like to have whatever portion of the east side that gets combined with the west to be a strong enough community and voting bloc that they can have real voice. I would be really nervous about having an area that was primarily apartment rental. As a district, it tends to be more transient and less engaged and could end up voiceless. So that would be my one concern looking at them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcia. Another call out to the audience. Anyone who wants to testify, sir?
I was not at all planning to this, so this is gonna be kind of improvised on the spot. But I live in Selwood. I grew up in Eastmoreland. Sorry.
Could you state your name for the record?
My name is Max.
Thank
Lived
you.
in a few other neighborhoods in the city, but that's where I am now. One thing that was testified, I don't remember who it was early on, talking about overly dividing the sorry, that's probably muting it. Overly dividing the neighborhoods and overly kind of increasing division because you have the west side block and the east side block, and that can lead to a problem when you have different commissioners who are only have to care about the west side or only have to care about the east side, and they don't have any real reason to compromise the other side because they only have to answer their constituents. One thing to consider is we have the multi-member districts, and one of the reasons I wanted this system, and I was very supportive of specifically the multi-member districts, is that it gives you a much deeper cross-section of the community as opposed to a single-member district where whatever the largest block in the district, they get be the sole representative of their constituency, and if you're not in that group, you're a minority in any sense of the word, just political minority, then you just kind of you're tough luck. And that is one that could be taken into account when you consider combine different communities of interest. That you can be a little fuzzier with that because you could have, if you have a district on the east side that is put into the west side, they will still hopefully be able to have enough of a voice to elect a district, and that also means that any politician representing that constituency, while they could probably play just the west side votes, they still have to take into account enough of the east side votes, because those votes in the close election could make the difference, which does force them to at least consider outside of their base. So that's mine.
Thank you, Max. Okay, last call. If there's anyone who would like to testify, and then we'll kind of pick up on some questions that were posed earlier. Sir, are you adding something new? Would you like to pose a question?
Steve Hartwell, I was up earlier. Whether we like it or not, the transportation has divided us. I live 84th and Powell. It'll take me 15 minutes to get to downtown and an hour to get to Halsey. So we've already been divided by transportation. So you're new, all of this, I'm still not gonna get me in my own district. I'm not gonna be able to move in my own district. So if I get on a bus on 82nd and take the bus out to the airport and get off on Halsey and go out to, let's say, 158th, you know, I have done all these transfers, yet I jump on the bus, I'm downtown 15 minutes. So how do you take TriMet and ODOT and say, okay, guys, it's no longer downtown Portland anymore. It's now districts. So get Steve from his house to somewhere else without him getting in his car. I would challenge you to go from our house, Powell, anywhere east or anywhere north or south. East or west is fine. North or south, might as well walk. I walked here. I can walk up here quicker than I can get a bus. So this is really something you have to consider. And you don't control TriMet. And you don't control ODOT. And these districts won't either. So how's that going to benefit us?
Thank you, Steve. It sounded like a question, sir, if you wouldn't mind. Sure, let's see if we, anyone want, I'm sorry, Chris, we want to see if the commissioners want to answer the question that was just posed first. Thank you. Do any commissioners want to answer the question that was just posed?
Make sure we understand what the question is.
What-
Yeah, just to make sure, so the Independent District Commission, one of our key focuses that we're challenged to, one of the deliverables that we're challenged with to have is to define the voting districts. How the city manages transportation is will be a result of this new form of government that will come to fruition. And so how the city will manage its transportation needs is beyond the scope of what it is that we're tasked to do, but it remains something that representation, you having the representation and the voice and the accountability within your community to make those priorities, that's the key, right? And so I hope that you would understand that one of the things that we're trying to do is make sure that you have the proper representation to escalate those types of priorities and issues.
However, that was one of your key lines, transportation.
Yeah, it was a key line in terms of requirements that they have transportation links. And so, yeah, to your point, yes.
And currently, our whole link is to go downtown.
Yeah.
So it is one of your criteria.
Okay, we'd love to take that offline.
Mr. Beck, quick question? Sure.
So, Commissioner Hanson, you mentioned that there were some maps that showed more lateral. I'm wondering if the commission has the authority to offer some version or two of that kind of vision, which still meets some of the community of interest goals. Maybe they're different community of interest goals than what these reflect, but they still meet your legal guidelines for community of interest and population, obviously. But you seem to imply there were some maps out there that were considered that kind of met the criteria. I'm wondering if the commission's willing to offer those to the community for consideration as you go forward with comments. And if you need to extend the process, I know there are ways to extend the process. The city council can probably still do that, maybe not.
Not according to charter, there isn't.
Well,
Commissioners, would you like to answer that question?
Sure, I'm happy to take a first stab at it, and then would be curious to hear from other folks. This to me sounds like a process question. It is my understanding that we are bound to the timeline that the voters approved last November, which is that we are required to have, as a commission, vote to approve a map no later than September 1st, and that we had to propose the maps that we were to propose to the community, we did on June 1st, which are the three that we are talking about today. And then after the last public hearing on the 16th, we will take all of the information that we have gathered in these hearings, as well as all of the other ways that folks can submit comment. And we as a commission have several meetings in the month of August to synthesize that information and come to a final decision. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that there is not there will not be, due to the timeline that the voters approved, there's not going to be an opportunity for us to do this whole process all over again with any maps besides the three that we have already shared. No, we're not bound to these three maps. We will certainly have conversations. And again, the final map is based on community input. So based on what we have heard, we will take all of that information, synthesize it, and come to a final map.
horizontal maps, I think they ought to be part of public.
Mr. Beck, we have some other questions from the audience that we need to take. Thank you so much. So there were a couple other questions posed. Oh, did you want to answer?
I
Excuse-
just want to support Commissioner Hanson in her comment. You'll recognize as a former member of the legislature that we are involved in a deliberative process, and what we're doing is we're not taking votes, we're seeking input. This is one of the important inputs. Another important input is we have more than 200 map designs that have been presented to us. Along with our technical consultants, we have sifted through those to try to meet the criteria and then also meet the voter intent as we understand it so far. So we will take all comments under advisement, give them due consideration. We're very committed to that. So thank you for the comment. I think we've heard what your suggestion is.
Thank you, Commissioner Fleischman. So during testimony, there were also a couple other questions posed that haven't quite been answered yet. So I'm going to pose them and see if any of you want to reply. One of the questions was, are precincts considered in these maps? Are precincts inclusive of school districts? Would anyone like to?
I would say that the precinct map was definitely one of the overlays that we were able to look at as we looked at all of the 200-plus maps that have come in. As were high school enrollment areas, I think everybody probably knows that the 4 public school districts that are not Portland Public School have 1 high school in each. So if you draw bands at all through the east, you end up cutting districts in half. The districts basically run north-south, and you would cut high school districts apart if you cut into the east district. And interestingly enough, if you open up the map for Portland Public Schools high school enrollment areas, they also have a heavy north-south the way they're drawn. So again, if you cut horizontally and stopped at 205, you would cut through most of the east side high school enrollment areas in doing those. If you look at Rose City Park, Roseway, and Madison South, which are the 3 neighborhoods that are above 84 that come into the Central East Side District, they happen to all 3 feed into McDaniels, which is south of 84, which is why they are the neighborhoods that we looked at for including south of 84.
Thank you. Okay, another question is, what are the considerations of parks and green spaces in these plans? Any commissioner?
Also, another overlay, there are literally dozens of overlays of information that we have been looking at when we lay out on the City of Portland, and parks and green space is one of those. We've heard a lot of community input from community members who either don't have parks and would like parks, and so they want their district to include enough advocacy to be able to have representation of that need. We've heard from people who are frustrated with parks not being funded. And I guess it could be argued, we've heard that from people across the city, so it could be argued that that is an interest group that may elect multiple city councilors where that's their priority. The same with other things that people wish they had that they don't have right now in terms of city services, and that crosses the city, including on the west side of the river. We've heard that from communities there as well.
Yeah, just to add on to that, and if folks want to look at the 200 maps that have been submitted to us, they all are on the website if you want to go through, as well as all of the meetings that we had, and everything is online, everything was recorded. One of the things, kind of along with parks that we heard really strongly from folks who live in East Portland is the experience of being annexed was, sort of not a community of common interest, but sort of a common experience that folks had, so that when a lot of city services were established, East Portland wasn't actually part of the city of Portland, and then portions of East Portland got annexed at different times, but that the services have been unevenly extended to East Portland. So parks would be one of those things that was impacted by annexation, along with sewer, water, and other city services. And so I see a lot of you nodding, very likely living in East Portland, and outer southwest Portland had similar experiences with that process as well. So thank you for that, and thanks for all the thoughtful comments, really appreciate it.
Okay, so before we wrap up public testimony, is there anyone who has not had a chance to speak that would like to provide a comment or pose a question? If you have not already testified. Okay, y'all, I think I'm going to close public testimony. Thank you so much. I just want to remind you, if you have more to say, or if you didn't feel comfortable saying it here, there are multiple ways to provide comment on this process, including there's comment cards in the back. You can email us, you can call 311, you can submit a form online. So please take advantage of all of those opportunities. So we will now end our time together by hearing any closing remarks from the Independent District Commissioners. So I'm going to now open it up to the table to see if there's anyone who would like to offer some closing thoughts or reflections about the testimony shared today. You're also Commissioner Kimura? Oh.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I just want to lead off with correctness. It's just a few things. One, there are no districts named Maple at this particular point. All we were trying to do was we had to tag each one of these maps with a name. And so there's no district name. These are just label tables for maps. Completely, respect that. And then I think, wanted to thank Kenya and the Next Up group, because you guys have been a great support of the organization and what the IDC Commission has been attempting to do with your getting young members involved. So I hope her group continues to support the IDC efforts with defining these zones.
Hi. I do want to say thank you, everybody, for coming out. It's hard when you have other things to do to come out on a Saturday morning and talk about stuff that, is really kind of like in the weeds. But we need to hear from you. And I thank you very much for making the effort and for providing testimony. Thank you again.
Echoing Commissioner Kimura, one of my favorite parts of all these hearings is just hearing how much people care about their neighborhoods and communities in this process. And voters overwhelmingly approved this change last November, and it's so great to see so many folks continue to be involved. An invitation for everyone in the room, especially if you're someone who did not come up and speak at the mic, is that in the back of the room we have some prompts on some giant Post-its on the window. We want some lots of different ways to share feedback, and so the 3 prompts are looking at these maps I like. What do you like about them? Looking at these maps I wish. What do you wish could be different? I wish there were banded districts. I wish there were something else. And then looking at these maps, what if? If you have an idea that you want us to consider, whether it's about parks or sidewalks or literally anything else, we've got some Post-its in the back, so if you've got something top of mind that wasn't shared or that you want to underscore, please do share your feedback that way. And we also have some stickers if you wanted to vote, if it were up to you and you could choose between or among alder, cedar, maple, or none of the above and something totally different. Just opportunity for a little straw poll in the back there, just because we do want everyone's opinion and voice to be heard regardless of whether you were at the mic. So thanks all so much.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you so much to our interpreters, to the commissioners, to the staff who made the hearing possible, and obviously a very special thank you to all of you for coming to testify today. The hearing is now officially adjourned, so please enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.